Okay, there's quite a few people on the Zoom now, so we're just gonna get started. I'm Lauren Peck. I go to Heelan. I'll be a junior this year. My first class with Manoj was when I was in 8th grade, so I've been doing this for a while. I've tutored for about 2 years now, but this is my first class that I've done. My reading score in the ACT is a 33, and I have a 35 in English, but I'll be teaching reading. Has anyone taken the ACT? Okay, so quite a few. That's good. Is reading not a very strong spot for anybody? Yeah, it's totally okay if it is. Yeah, okay. So some things that are going to help in this class is if you definitely write down what I put on the board in the notebooks that should be in all of your guys' bags. Definitely, if I'm talking too quickly or you just don't understand what I said, or if I didn't write something clear, definitely ask me to repeat it. I totally will. And definitely do all of the homework that Manoj gives you, even though it might not be the most fun, it's definitely going to help you. And you'll definitely get out what you put into it. Hi. There's another chair in the back. Maybe slide in next to somebody on a table. Can everybody slide over and make a little bit of extra room, just on like the edge? Thanks so. Alright, my name's Lauren, by the way. Another thing about doing homework, make sure you're doing it to learn and not just to be able to say that you'd finished it all and you did it. And then come to class prepared with all of your stuff and with any questions you might have from the time before or from when you were doing the homework. Anything that just didn't make sense, make sure you get it cleared up because anything is going to help you when you're taking the actual test. And then also when you ask questions, it helps me know what to focus on, which just helps everybody really. And then during class, also make sure you ask questions because for one thing, it makes the class a lot more interesting, so it's not just me talking. And then it also helps you remember because you can just apply it to what you know and what you are learning still. And then, hi. I need a couple. I don't know if we can fit another table in here. You can grab these chairs, but I'm not sure where it's going to fit exactly. Oh, there's one back there. I'm Lauren, by the way, for you too. Let's see. Oh, also I can stay afterwards and answer questions too if you're a little shy and don't want to do it during class. That's totally fine. And then on to how to do the homework. Manoj is going to give you a sheet that has it all outlined with what you need to do, what books, what chapters to read, what questions to do, all this stuff. And we don't check if you do the homework or not, but I definitely recommend doing it. A lot of the homework is just going to be taking practice tests. And so when you do them, make sure you take them seriously, timed, under pressure, so that it's as close to the real test experience as you'll get. And then always correct your practice tests because there's no point in taking them if you just go and get all the answers wrong and then don't even know it. So a really good way to correct them is to do the test, go to the back and read where the answers are, and then mark what you got wrong, but don't mark the right answer yet. So go through, mark it wrong, and then try it one more time and see if you get it right so that you don't just mark the right answer and move to the next thing and not learn anything from that problem. And then if after that one more time it's still wrong, that's totally fine. just go to the back and read the book's explanation for it. They should all have little, like, descriptions of what it should say. Yeah, so, like, this is answers to a science test, and then it explains why the best answer is what it is. So that'll be really helpful when you're going through and correcting. Any questions so far over anything I've gone through? No? Okay, now we're going to get into notes. So go ahead and grab your notebooks. Okay, so the super basics of reading is that there's 40 questions and 35 minutes. And those 40 questions are broken down into 4 passages where you have 10 questions per passage. So if you completely break that down, you have about 8 minutes, 45 seconds per passage. But you want to do it in 8. So every reading test will have the same amount of questions, same time, same passages, all this. This is another reason why taking your practice tests under time, like restraint, will be really helpful. Because there's obviously more questions than you have minutes. So getting the timing down will be really important. Is it all good if I erase? Okay. Now we're going to go into the types of passages you're going to see in the test. The first one is called prose fiction. And it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of a fiction passage. It's also narration. So this one is like a story, and you're going to want to look for the theme or the big picture that it's going for. And then this will always come first in the reading test. So this will always be what the first passage is. And then you're going to have social sciences. Which is kind of like social studies. It's going to be like history, anything related like that. So it could be talking about like an old president or artwork, anything like that. It wants you to think about the subject and the point of view, all that type of stuff. And then the third one is humanities. And this is like the arts. I want you to think about the tone or the feeling the author is trying to convey. So like, what is the author really trying to get across with what they wrote about their subject? And then the fourth one is natural science. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a science passage. And it wants you to think about the details that it's talking about and the facts. So every reading test is always going to go in this order. And it's really helpful if you find what order works best for you. Like if you really like science, do science first, that type of stuff. And I think I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But does everybody have this down? Yeah. Okay, now we're going to go into the types of questions that you'll see. The one you'll see a lot is the main idea. This just wants you to see like the big picture, what's really going on in this passage. And then, kind of the opposite, it'll want you to see the details or the little picture. This will be certain stuff in like the first line of the passage that you won't even think of until you get to the questions, and it wants you to look back right there. And then the next type is vocab in context. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It wants you to say how you use that word, or my bad. It wants you to tell what that word means in the sentence that it was used in. So it's actually going to tell you exactly where to look, and then you answer from there. So it'll be like, in paragraph 2, line 17, what does this word mean in the way that it's used? And then the fourth type is inference. Basically, it just wants you to come up with your own idea about what you think that author is trying to get across. So it might not be directly in the passage word for word with how you answer your question, but it'll definitely be supported by the details that it has. Then the fifth type is the author's method or view. So these questions will just kind of answer like the why. Like why did the author write it like this? Or what they're trying to get across. Yeah. I think I can fit this over here. So then going with the questions, we're going to go with, sorry, does everybody have this one? Yeah. Okay. So the passage method is how you go about reading and answering your questions. So one way that you can go about it is to skim the passage. And then read your questions. So this would be, when you're skimming, this would take about 3 minutes total. And then when you're reading your questions, you take about 5 minutes. And that would give you the 8 minutes that you are aiming for doing the whole passage in. Then your second method that you could do is to read the whole passage. And then read the questions. And when you're reading, it takes a little bit more time. So you get about 4 minutes to read the whole passage, and then a minute less to read your questions. But if you're a really strong reader, I suggest this one. If you get through it quick and you know what's going on still, then there's no harm in reading it all. But if you're a little bit slower reader, then maybe skimming is better because you don't want to go over on your time. But it's really whatever works for you. And then another way you could do it would be to read the questions and mark your passage. This one is not recommended because it'll take a lot of time if you read the questions, go read the passage, and then go back to the questions. It's just not likely that you'll get it all done in the right amount of time, so we don't want to do that one. And then the fourth way would be to read the questions and then read your passage. Once again, it'll just take too much time, so don't want to do this one either. Even if you are a strong reader, it's much better if you just go with either one of these two. Any questions so far on anything? Okay. Everybody's done with this one. Now we're going to go into what you want to do before reading. Is it good if I erase all this? Okay, so before reading, like I talked about earlier with the types of passages like prose fiction, humanities, those things, you're going to want to find what order works best for you in like order of ease. So the first step would be to do passages in order of ease. So like my order was actually 1, 2, 3, 4, but you could be 4, 3, 2, 1. It could be 2, 4, 3, 1. It can be anything that works best for you, really. But that all comes with practice. So when you're doing your practice tests, this is another reason why it's important to do it like the actual test, because you don't want to walk into your testing site not knowing what you're doing in reading and then just being like, oh yeah, I'm going to do natural science first, then humanities, then prose fiction. It just won't go smoothly for you if you don't practice it first. The second thing that you're going to want to do is to take note of the passage context. So you want to look at the title, the citation, and that type of stuff. And this is all found at the very beginning of the passage at the top. So you just want to do this so that you just kind of get an idea of what's going on before you even start it. And we would do a little exercise for this, but we're not going to do it right now because we don't all have the same books. But yeah, basically you just do this so that if the passage is going to be about like Abraham Lincoln, you read that little blip and you're like, oh, I remember this about him, so maybe this is going to be in the passage. And then your brain is already just ready and into what the passage is going to be about. So then that's another way you can just like link what you already know, and then it just makes it easier. And the third thing you have to do is to force yourself to be interested. Now, as silly as it sounds, this is probably the most important one. It's only 8 minutes of your life, so really, you just gotta power through those passages and it'll all be worth it when you get a good score. And then you also can't get distracted. You just really have to be into Abraham Lincoln for 8 minutes. Okay. Does everybody have this stuff? Okay, and then we're going to get into while you're reading. So when you're reading, sometimes it really helps if you take notes and underline what you find important. So that's the fourth step. Take notes and underline. It's also called indexing, which might be something that sounds a little bit more familiar. But basically this just helps you when you are done reading the passage and then you go jump to your questions and you're like, oh, I remember reading about this, but I don't remember where. If you have it underlined, it helps you find it a lot quicker, which just saves you time, which in the end is really important. And then after reading, okay, so by formulate your own answer and then look, what I mean is that when you read the question, you're going to want to answer it in your head before you even look at the options. Because sometimes the options just throw you off, and if you know what it is already, then you just want to find one that matches what you think. So we recommend doing this with every question, really. And then another thing that is super helpful is the process of elimination. So the same thing goes for every test in the ACT. Only one answer is right. So if an answer choice is even a little bit off, it's completely wrong. And another thing that kind of goes along with that, just answer what the question is asking and not some other detail that you might think is related. So, something that can kind of trip you up on this method is that some answer choices can be factually correct and the passage can support it and stuff, but it's not actually answering the question that it wants you to. So, like, if it asks what kind of dog the girl had, but it's like, oh, the sky was blue today, that's right, but it doesn't answer the question, so that's not going to be the right choice. And then another thing is to make sure the passage supports your answer. You don't need any prior knowledge to anything that you read in this to answer the questions right. So it'll be explicitly stated in the passage the right answer, really. And then one last thing under this. So timing is really everything in the reading test of the ACT. So if you're more than 30 seconds into a question and not 30 seconds from finding the answer to it, just skip it and come back to it later. Because all questions are really worth the same, and you don't really lose anything if you go answer the other ones first and come back to this one. Is everybody good with this? Any questions so far on anything? No? Today's kind of a lot of notes. In the future, we'll probably be taking practice tests, so we actually get to practice these methods instead of just learning about them. Okay. So, there's some types of passages that you might see that are a little less straightforward than just the whole passage of words and then the questions. and they're called split passages. So basically, it's exactly what it looks like. So you'll have like passage A, and it'll have all of this stuff, and then you'll have passage B, and it'll have everything that it's about. And this will all be on the same page with the same questions, but you'll have to read two separate things. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. Well, actually, I just recommend reading the first one and then answer the first passage's questions. And then read and answer the second passage. And then answer the questions that are about both of them. So they might not always be super nice about it and put passage A's questions at the beginning, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then passage 2's like 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the joint ones 9 and 10. A lot of times they'll just be mixed up, and you'll have to go through and find what one's about passage A and what one's about passage B. But they will always be about the same topic. They might just have like conflicting viewpoints on something. You'll also see that a lot in science. But you can do the same method where you answer about the first one and then the second one after that. Okay, and now some answers that are going to try and trap you and get you to choose the wrong thing. They're called trap answers. The first thing they'll do is distort the information, so distortion. They'll twist details from the passage, distorting them, and make them so that they're no longer correct. So like in the passage it might say something about like April 4th, but in the answer they're like April 5th. And it was close, but it's not exactly right, so they twisted it. That answer can't be the right answer choice. Going along with that is a misused detail. Which is also exactly what it sounds like. It's just giving you the wrong information. Or it is in the passage, but it doesn't answer what the question is asking. So this could be the same type of thing, like it could be talking about how this girl has a dog, but the question is asking you about like her brother or something like that. So then another one is out of scope. This is basically just something that wasn't even talked about in the passage. So like I said earlier, you don't really need any prior knowledge. So if it wasn't even mentioned, then it's not going to be right. Then the last type is extremes. This is when they use words like always, never, best, or worst. Now these are dangerous because it's very permanent, like, I don't know, something just might not always be like that, or it's not never like that. So I'd say for these, you'd really want to find out in the passage if it explicitly said they always this. Okay. So that's it for the trap answers. Everybody have these? Okay. There's just one more major tip. And that's just always choose the best answer choice based on support from the passage. So it's basically what I've been preaching this whole time. Use the passage to your advantage. It's always going to give you the right answer in one way or another. It'll either have it exactly word for word or worded a little differently, but still the same, or still lead you to the same answer. But there's always an answer choice that's correct, and the passage definitely helps you find it. But that is everything I have for you guys today. So, you guys are free to go. Unless there's any more questions anybody has.